All right, so we are in the final week of the study on spiral dynamics. I hope that the past 3 weeks have been helpful, if not insightful, in understanding how people, organizations, church groups, any sort of gathering or individually, people see and act in the world. As I said before, spiral dynamics is simply a tool to help us understand how people think under different circumstances. None of these worldviews is better than another. It's just where a person's perspective and their life journey has led them. And sort of the things you're encountering in the world may guide you in different directions. As I've said before, as you move along in life, you don't just leave the ones in the past behind, but you sort of transcend them, but you still include them. So after going through, as I said just a little while ago, after going through yellow and turquoise this morning, I've got some thoughts and prompts to finish up the study, but more than anything, I want to give space for any of you to bring anything that you have to ask, to any ideas that have been spurred inside of you over the past 3 weeks or this week, any thoughts you have, anything to add to the conversation. I found that conversation is sort of what really kind of helps flush this out, or at least it did for me in the past. There's no set in stone plan for how this is going to wrap up, so use that freedom. I want everybody to leave the room feeling like they've gained something in this study. So I'll quickly go through where we've been, and then we'll go from there. You start in beige when you're born. This is also, the mindset is physical survival. In the adult population, this is just 0.1%, so this is a very small minority. In the Bible, think of David when he's fleeing Saul. Think of Joseph when he's been sold by his brothers. You are alone. The only thing is, how am I going to make it till tomorrow? TV movie example, I gave Castaway with Tom Hanks, where he's on a deserted island and he's got to fend for himself. Also, somebody brought up the book Hatchet. Then you go to purple, where it's the shift to realizing you're part of a larger tribe. Your mindset shifts from physical survival to safety with a group, with and from the unseen. 10% of the population. This is a very magical time. Communion, baptism are situations today that we still go to. Purple. Abram and Moses in the Bible are these leaders that are guiding the Israelites in a world that is anything's possible. The unseen can do anything. God is capable of acting on our behalf, and they're the leaders that can engage with that and can explain it. Disney movies are a great example of purple thinking. Also, Apocalypto and The Village. Shifts to red, which is 15 to 20% of the population, where it shifts to the compelling drive is power over the adversary. I think I've said that wrong every week. So it's might makes right. Whoever's the strongest gets to make the rules. Example is 1 Samuel 8, where Israel asks for a king rather than having the judges be the ones who engage with God on their behalf. Another example is Samson. Their TV movie examples, people living in the red mindset, is William Wallace, who wants to conquer Scotland back for themselves, wants to use his sword to free his people and give him power. Talked about The Godfather, and also in current day, I think cartels. That'd be a good example of the red worldview. Also in our world, that would be think where illegal activity and violence, societies where that is strong. Blue shifts 35 to 40% of the population, so we got a big jump there. Compelling drive is truth and principle. There's a story that us as a people live by, and if you want to be in with us, you need to live by our story. This is a way to control the chaos that was red. Think of historically the Catholic Church, where the Pope is setting down laws or he's setting the world and how it's going to be. If somebody wants power in a country, in Europe at that time, they got to go through the Pope to get his approval that this is something that's going to happen. Very much still in today, the Church of Christ, we live by the Scripture, and the Scripture is what the Scripture is, and we want to live by this this text that is telling us what our story needs to be in order to have to be right with God. Examples, I talked about any coach, any teacher, that's sort of the blue kind of concept. I shouldn't say any. I talked about Denzel Washington's character in Remember the Titans, the chaos that existed in that movie, that he brought these people together on this football team and gave them a story that they were going to live by that was different than the chaos that surrounded them. I was talking about Saving Private Ryan, Tom Hanks' character, bringing these individuals together into a collective story. We talked about how HR in a company is sort of the blue. It's here's our rule book, and when things go awry in the company, HR is there to resettle and tell people this is who we are as a company, this is what we do. And I know, I'm sorry if anybody hasn't been here, this is a lot to throw at you in just a few minutes, but orange is the shift after that, where it's 25 to 30% of the adult population. The drive is personal achievement, where you're going to put the story that is told in blue, this is what truth is, and you put it under the microscope, say, why is this what we believe? Good example of that is Martin Luther back in 1500, 1600, when he challenged the Catholic Church and said, okay, are we doing the things that we are claiming to do? Here's a bunch of things I have a problem with what you're doing. That's not something that happens in blue. So that's the mindset of, here it's the power, whoever's the strongest gets to make the rules. Here it's whoever's the smartest, whoever it has the best idea is the one who's going to lead. That's very much the American dream, manifest destiny. If you have the means to do something and the mind to set it forth, then you should be the one leading. I talked about Gordon Gekko in Wall Street. That mindset is a very good example. Talked about Daniel Day-Lewis and There Will Be Blood, and that's once again the manifest destiny kind of concept. Very individualistic once again. And we talked about in business, sales, marketing, coming up with how you're going to lead your company and push it beyond the others. Then we talked about green, which is 10% of the population. This is a jump to egalitarianism. The compelling drives, egalitarianism, ecology. Now that we've made these great gains and advances, how are we going to lift everybody up with that? How are we going to share our wealth, so to speak, so that everybody's taken care of, not only people, but planet. Talked about what does this look like in religion, egalitarian and rights-oriented minded spaces is where green sort of exists. It's still, with it only being 10% of the population, it's not really a strong leadership place right now. It's still a growing sect of humanity. So it's got influence, obviously, but it's not going to be in the population groups of 35, 40, 25, 30 of blue and orange. TV characters we talked about. Patch Adams is a good example of the green mindset. Also talked about Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park. Did you scientists think what you were going to do before you did it? So that's where we've been. And we're going to jump into yellow and turquoise this week. But before we get into that, I want to preface that there is some debate over yellow and turquoise existence. With any new theories, this theory came up in about the 1960s. With any new theories, people take them in different directions. There's relative agreement between the four names that this is Claire Graves is sort of the designer of this. And then here is sort of his three proteges that took it from there: Don Beck, Christopher Cowan, and Ken Wilber. There's relative agreement that on yellow and turquoise from them, but others have said that yellow and turquoise are simply more developed forms of green. There's others that are more accusatory that claim that yellow and turquoise were invented to keep people coming back to seminars and to training sessions to reach the highest levels. Pay me $500 and come for this weekend, and I'll make you integral, that kind of thing. I fully buy into yellow and turquoise, but just wanted to put it out there that there's some people who have that perspective. So anyway, let's get into yellow. This shift takes place, moving to yellow is where you no longer see yourself at odds with the other centers of gravity, the other worldviews. in the prior 6, there's a sense that your worldview is correct and all the others are off base, if not dangerous. Yellow begins to integrate all the prior worldviews into something more holistic. This is, and I apologize for having a light green pen, it's as close to yellow as I got. So yellow, this is also called integral. And this is about 1% of the population. So we're going back down to the ends of the bell curve. And the compelling drive is systemic health. Worldview. And I'm sorry, I don't have this in front of you on the papers. This is where the majority of people are, so I wanted to kind of keep the focus there, but we'll go into this real quick. Worldview. The world is a vast network of complex, often paradoxical relationships where ever-changing realities demand holistic approaches to life. Life is at risk of chaotic collapse. This gives us our awareness of the intricate connection between all life systems, the deep complexities of understanding human problems, the paradoxical realities that operate below the surface of sensory observation, so beyond what we can just see, and the need to stretch the limits of our personal flexibility in order to fit naturally and non-disruptively into the flow of a constant change. This also gives us a systemic approach to problem solving. Strengths of yellow. It's highly adaptive and non-disruptive. It's interested in high, diverse fields of humanity. It sees the fuller complexity of problems and issues and can track a wide array of variables simultaneously. Weaknesses of yellow. And I know these is a bunch of big words for some reason. Once you get to yellow and turquoise, apparently regular words don't really work anymore. Weaknesses. It can easily forfeit attention to detail. You can be detached from feelings, from people, and from the immediate moment, from wanting to look at the large scope of things all the time, and impatience with partisanship or narrow-mindedness. In the church, and this is 1% of the population, so this is going to be a minor piece, or very few people in church are going to have this perspective, but presses for a church ready to explore spiritual insight wherever it can be found. It will seek Bible studies that integrate into a broader dialogue with culture. How does this impact the grand scheme of things? It presses for sermons that can point them towards appropriate resources for future study. Give me things I can take from this and carry on into the future. I want to study beyond what I'm hearing here. And it presses for a focus on attacking systemic issues in our communities rather than simply providing things like food or clothing. How can we fix the issue rather than just getting people to the next day? So the shift into yellow carries the feeling of isolation and being alone in your new perspective. There's a world that's continually being at odds, but all you see is the disunity that exists on all sides in a world that's on a brink beneath it all. Due to the interconnectedness of our world, you see each division and action as having a ripple effect that reaches the edges of our planet. There's this sense that we've got to focus on this thing. Everybody's so at odds. We're losing the plot of what we need to be doing here. We need to refocus. That's where yellow is constantly at. Yellow thinking is roughly analogous to watching a dozen different TV screens, all tuned to different channels. As you scan from screen to screen, you're trying to keep track of what's happening on every TV. That's how a yellow person processes as information. Have any of you seen think of like a news channel director's room or any sort of productions, TV, think of sports, where there's a person in a room with like 50 TV screens and they've got to determine what's going to get put on the air, what prompts are going to be on there, kind of ordering a story out of a lot of different options, just piecing something together piece by piece. A person who's able to see all of that and sort of create a narrative, create a story out of it, that's sort of another way to look at it. Hopefully that's helpful. Yellow is an integrator. It seeks to incorporate the best of every system into a functioning whole. It has an almost intuitive appreciation for the strengths of all the previous systems. It believes that each of them can contribute to a healthy, well-balanced society. So another example of this is kind of think of somebody over a major corporation. They've got to get all the people who are coming in the doors to align on one idea. This is who we are as a company. We've got, this part of the organization. HR, for instance, is going to come in and is going to keep us on our path of who we are. Sales marketing is going to keep our company afloat. Is going to give us. We're going to have our goals, and they're going to be the ones who zero in on what that's going to be. Green, that's going to be community outreach, ways to improve the community around. There's all these different things that a company is doing, and there's got to be somebody there who is steering the ship in a certain direction. So that's kind of one way to think of it. I mentioned the TV director. The first week I talked about Don Beck in the 80s as Nelson Mandela is trying to create a new government in South Africa. He calls up Don Beck. Don Beck's a very yellow example in this setting where he goes over there and he works with the new leadership of South Africa and is helping them see all the different pieces they've got to piece together to make a new South Africa that's actually functioning, because it's chaos at that time. You've got lots of people with different ideas about what this should be and how it should look. They're creating a new government. Should we just, forget about who we've been? Should we create something totally new? How do we get everybody on the same page? So Mandela called up Don Beck, asked him to come to South Africa, and they met for weeks and weeks, came lots of times to create something that everybody could get on board with and could sort of create this new thing out of chaos. So that's sort of an example of a yellow that I brought up in week 1. Biblical religious examples. The only example I could think of is Jesus. And in church, if you don't know the answer, maybe the answer is Jesus. So maybe that's what I'm doing here. But that's sort of someone who can see the full picture and is bringing us all along wherever we are, keeping us focused on keeping our eyes on the goal. And a movie TV example that I think is pretty good is Black Panther, where there is and I'm trying to think how to summarize this. I read something off that was really good. So Black Panther, you've got this is maybe too complicated to explain. All the different pieces of now I'm blanking.
The different tribes.
You've got a story. You've got this great. Trying to think. I'll just put the example up and hopefully you all understand.
They're like their technology is much better.
Right.
Like
Exactly.
because of
But then they're also taking that technology and sharing it with the worldwide to make everybody
Whereas
better
before it was hidden, only held for them.
Right.
So that's actually a good.
So it's
It's like
the leadership of
maybe Wakanda at the end of the first Black.
exactly yeah, it's all coming together. Yeah. And if you haven't seen it, I'm sorry, you should see it. It's a good movie. So
What
questions?
about
Yeah.
Paul.
Hmm?
Is Paul a yellow? Paul? Does he kind of see like the bigger picture?
See, so I would say there are pieces when Paul is doing things in Scripture that is he's obviously talking to people in different religious settings. And for people who haven't been here before, what you see here is in the beige, red, orange, and yellowish, it's very much more of an individualistic mindset. It's how am I going to achieve. Yellow is a little more complicated than that. But and then in the communal, on the purple, blue, green, and turquoise, it's much more of a communal, how do we come together mindset.
Maybe Paul's more on that side.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be some of that to it, but what does he know? How does he know it? What is he doing? I think there are some things that he says that are definitely you could put in the yellow camp. That's sort of the beauty of a lot of Scripture is that there's there's multiple things happening at the same time. They're talking not only to the people then, but it's also being drawn from us today. So I think you could put them there in some cases, yeah. So hopefully yellow didn't totally confuse everyone. I'm trying to explain it as well as I can. Any thoughts, questions at this time? We've got some time to work with. So. Well, I'll keep going and then we can open that up. So from here we go to turquoise, which another name for it is holistic. And this is, so beyond yellow lies turquoise. If you want a single term that epitomizes turquoise perspective, you might opt for the phrase a global village. Turquoise revisits the tribal building themes of purple, but on a planetary level. Home is the earth itself rather than just a small tribe. I'd sum up turquoise as with a look back from the shift of beige to purple, the move from individual survival to a safety that is found by working together with a group. Think of that shift on a global scale. It's yellows forming a tribe to work together for global safety. Everything's connected, not as isolated or individualized as it was in yellow. And this very rarely happens face to face. This is very much happening globally between people around who are communicating via internet, Zoom. It's people doing big things and working together. And this is just 0.1% of the population. So we're back down to the smallest amounts on this. And the compelling drive is holistic convergence. Worldview, the world is a grid of mutually independent units which together form a holistic organism. Life is a single living entity. So it's sensible to seek the order beneath Earth's apparent chaos. This gives us synergy between all forms and forces of life, makes energetic connections, and gives us a holistic and collective consciousness. Strengths, you see the world as fully connected and a desire to explore, feel, and pragmatically work together to solve the large, complex problems to serve humanity and the earth. Weaknesses, and the saying, you're so heavenly minded that you're no earthly good, can kind of catch up to you here. You can lose track of the day-to-day activities because you're so focused on the larger picture. And it can be impersonal. Turquoise looks at the entire planet as a single living unit, seeing no political boundaries, ethnic enclaves. They simply disappear from view along with racial distinctions and nationalistic identities. Think of an astronaut looking back at planet Earth from a spaceship. You can't see all the division that exists. It's just this one full picture. In the eyes of turquoise, all humanity forms a single unit, struggling with one ultimate issue: how to prevent deadly polarization and short-sighted partisanship from destroying the earth, our home. I'm just going to jump through these real quick. I couldn't even think of a biblical religious example of this. Maybe the Trinity working together. I don't know. So I'll just say to be determined. And moving these examples, and I haven't seen either of these, so I'm just going to put them up on the board. And if you have, maybe you can walk through these. But Cloud Atlas and Sense8 were two examples. This is going to be, like I talked about.
Sense8?
Sense8 is some TV show.
Yeah, I know. I watched
There you go.
first season, but
All right, come on up and explain.
I don't see how it works.
Okay. Well then, we'll put a
I was
question mark. We'll put a
thinking-
question mark by Sense8.
I was thinking Avatar
Avatar.
because they're like a world, like a tribe that works together, and they're like all connected spiritually and stuff.
Okay. We'll go with that.
I thought when you were talking about it, maybe like very early on in the pandemic, before maybe other worldviews got mixed in, when the scientists were sharing the genetic formation of the virus, to then be like, whoever can work on this to help create a vaccine or create a cure or create how to fight this, that was, I mean, they were sharing it from China all over the world
Mhm.
at the beginning.
I would agree with that. That's a people coming together under serious circumstances and trying to come up with a solution. I like that.
I mean, the only time maybe in the Bible was like before Adam ate the apple, maybe, and then there wasn't that many people, so.
That would have been pretty easy to have agreement on things. Global peace in the garden. That sounds kind of nice. All right. So any thoughts before? And like I said, we're dealing with 1.1% of the population with these. So I kind of wanted to hit this kind of quickly. All right. So all right. So I'm just going to open this up, and I know for some of you who this is kind of your first taste of all this, this is a lot, but I just want to open it up to questions, clarifications, thoughts, comments. For me, like I said at the beginning, the most beneficial conversations I had after learning spiral dynamics was simply unpacking what I learned and talking through it with other people. I guess I'll just kind of open it up if people want to have any questions. I know there's probably a lot of it. All right. Well, I'll talk about this one. We can kind of walk through the colors.
I don't know, you just didn't give a lot of time
I'm
because
sorry.
people had questions.
I'm sorry.
So it's interesting how things do move through.
Yeah.
And I think us remembering that it's not like I'm moving from here to here to here.
Right.
I'm moving from here, or the world or whatever is moving to the next spot, but everything else is still available, and it's not like it's gone.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's kind of something that it's more of a progression and a learning than a movement, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I've said this all the way along, but like we don't need to think of this as how can I get to the next stage. It's because if somebody's community, if somebody's set of circumstances have placed them somewhere that works for them, great. Like if you have a way of seeing the world that works for you and it's not harming other people, that's all that's all we can ask for. That's perfect. And so yeah, absolutely, like you were saying, and like I've said plenty of times, something happens that causes our world to shift, or we go into worship and we have different experiences that's going to put us someplace that we aren't always at, and that's good. When we're in communion time, we're thinking about the world in a different way than when we're at a business meeting, and that's healthy. That's good.
Well, you say there's like you said it over and over, you said at the beginning of every class, there does seem to be like obviously not everybody in the world is sitting in beige, for example.
Yeah.
But it does kind of seem like maybe several years ago, for some of us who are more middle-aged or older, it's like, maybe years back you were purple, but maybe you've hit red or blue and you've progressed to orange or green. I mean, there does seem to be some type of progression.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, the majority of us aren't sitting in yellow or turquoise,
Mm-hmm.
but there does seem to be kind of like, because I can think back in times in my life where it might have been purple and I might have hit red, and then it's like, as we've talked about, blue and orange and green, whether it's, individual or community. Because like as you progress along in life, if you open yourself up to new ideas of thinking, maybe you don't agree with it all.
Right.
But it opens your mind up to some of the things that are touched on with what you talked about.
Yeah.
So there does seem to be a little bit of some progression, but then again, to your point, your community and your mind shifts. Some people, and it's fine, they may be in red and they stay in red, and that, like you said, if that works for them, that's their community, that's the individualistic, but if that works for them, that's fine. But some people may due to their life circumstance, shift to other colors.
Right. Yeah. Our American world is very much, right in here. And so it's tough if you grew up in America, you go get a job, you experience life there's sort of going to be a pulling that occurs kind of into this zone. So I mean, yes, there are people in the U.S. that are still in those areas, and that works for them. But there's going to be just a natural sense that when you're around people that think certain ways, you're going to gravitate in those ways, just naturally. You're going to see. I've talked about this in the past, but I want to make sure I have that. You see a limitation in your previous way of seeing the world, and if you never experience that limitation, if you never see something wrong with red, you may never get, inching closer to blue because it's always working for you. But being in a world where people are thinking in different ways, you're going to be introduced to limitations. You're gonna, when you go, often, this is one example. You may have a very simple, or you may have a story that you've been told that this is the way the world works. You go to college and you have a roommate that grew up in a completely different way of seeing the world. You're going to have two competing stories that both people seem to be in a healthy place. And all of a sudden you're thinking, maybe there's more than one way to do this. What do I do with that? And that might initiate you. And there's different things that come along the way in life where, your concept of how things are is interrupted by someone who sees something differently. And how do I work with that? How do I do, what do I do with this new information? Do I engage with this person? And I want to understand why you see things the way you do. As we engage with the world, we're up against people who are different than we are. And that initiates, all kinds of change and growth and, or the opposite.
I'm still trying to,
Sure.
first time in the
I
class,
understand.
so I'm process.
Yeah, okay, yeah, sorry.
So if you tend to, I don't see myself fitting in any one of those, but sometimes maybe a blend of several.
Yeah.
And I wonder, is there a correlation, like say you're in a blue, would you then maybe have red and orange tendencies, but maybe not purple and green because they're kind of separated by that other category? Or can you show, so if I'm blue, would I also show tendencies of red and orange?
So the way I've kind of talked about it through the class is you typically have a center of gravity that you sort of exist within. This is your common way of seeing the world. This is where you exist the most in. But then, trying to think how to say this simply. So as you interact with, let's say that you're blue, you have a way of seeing the world, there's a story that you believe. And then someone pushes up against that story. Often the reaction to that is you'll shift into red where you want to sort of strongly push back against the other, use your power over, and not necessarily in a you don't want to dominate the other person, but you sort of want to say, no, that's not right. I'm gonna say that's not correct. This is where we need to be. I hope
Not letting yourself get pushed over.
you're not letting yourself get pushed over, but you're also sort of standing up for your story. So that would be a shift there.
Good side power.
As anything you've moved through, you still have access to those from your past. Purple, an example of this. When you may, let's say you're very much in a blue mindset and you go to an Astros game. The blue story is, I just want everybody to follow the rules. I just want this game to go well. But when you're at the game, you're saying, I want my team, I want my tribe to beat this other tribe. I want the warriors, the powerful of my tribe to go out there and hit a home run so that my team will win. You don't stay, as different circumstances come up in your life, you easily shift around. You don't even think about it when you're doing it. You go back to where you were. Christmas time, and you got kids coming up and you're telling them this story of what Christmas is. The magical aspects of your past. You so easily move in between because you have moments from your past where you see these different things and the joy that it brought you. And so, yeah, you easily bounce back and forth. I would say probably if you're blue, you've probably experienced things in work, just in the American story that say, what if I did something to sort of create, so I want to sort of lead in this world, this business world. I want to create these new ideas. I want to push, there's going to be things that you experience that are going to give you these different perspectives, just naturally through life. So yeah, there's going to be nobody is just one thing. You're going to exist within a host of them all.
I was kind of wondering if maybe you bounce back more to the individualistic to strengthen or to maybe promote the communal side, maybe.
Yeah, and I mean, different settings are gonna reward different things. Business world, sports world are gonna reward the strongest. Church, family, anytime you're in a community, these are the values that are gonna be more pushed forward. Quit trying to dominate the situation. Let's just live in community. Let's
Work together.
let's find peace.
Yeah.
There's less peace up here unless you're the one at the top. There's peace if you're the strongest business in the market.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of peace if you're the one that's at the bottom of the food chain who's struggling. So, and in community, in the more communal ones, there's going to be much more of a group. Like, how can we rise as a group? How can we find safety, security, that type of thing. All right, so one thing I do want to touch on, I don't think I've really hit this much, is there's health and unhealth in each of these, and I'll just kind of run through these quick. This is examples of health, what things look like in health in each of these. For purple, you're experiencing the realm of spiritual realities without lapsing into superstition. In red, healthy red, you're being tough without being heartless at the same time. Blue, you're delving into deeply into truth without becoming too legalistic. Orange, you're pursuing excellence without exploitation. Green, you're being caring and compassionate without developing a sense of superiority. And yellow and turquoise, you're working on big picture issues without losing a heart for hands-on involvement in small, seemingly insignificant acts. So we don't have a ton of time, but I think I'll just skip over that. That's I'll just leave it at this. The implications of all of this, interpersonally, how we interact with people when you're having conversations with someone who sees the world completely different. Being able to see the heart behind what people are doing, where people are coming from, is a great gift that this can give you. Understanding that they're not trying to destroy your sense of how the world is. They see it differently. They may, in your perspective, it might be worse, it might be better, but they're not doing something that's trying to put harm on the way you see it. They just see it a different way, and that's not a bad thing. Religiously, spiritually, like I've said before, this isn't only true for people. This is true for organizations, for any group of people. Churches will find themselves with a center of gravity. But I think, as we can all attest, when we go into the room when we go into the worship center, there's going to be people who see the world in all kinds of different ways that are in there. How can we as a group get on the same page? How can we have a common goal for what we want BAML to be when people are coming from all different parts? Culturally, globally, I don't even think we need to talk about the division that exists in this world as a result of the different worldviews that exist. It's such a tall task to have leadership that can unite people. That having sort of some insight into this spiral dynamics can kind of help see why things might function the way they do or not function the way they do. Competing worldviews. Somebody always wants to be the dominant worldview at the expense of the others. And
I think generationally too. Like, I think that the teenagers and the young college age type kids right now, they have been faced with global realities at a much earlier age than people pre-internet, or even us who were growing up at the beginning of the internet. And so I just think that has caused quite a shift.
Yep.
And probably, this is a huge generalization, but in a lot of Gen Zs, where their worldview center might be, is going to be a little bit more global just because of their exposure.
Yeah, the fast forward button's
Yeah.
been hit on the world. I think of like my grandparents growing up in a small town. very much grown up around one way of doing things. And all you gotta do is get on a computer and you've got every story that's out there. You've got every, advancement. You could spin, you could jump as quickly as you want to, which is
I see.
part of the trouble is if you're getting so far over here without fully experiencing some of the other things, do you have them to access?
I see corporate America just like red and orange, just staying right there. And they're doing everything they can to keep us away from blue and green and yellow and turquoise because that doesn't serve them.
Yeah, and very much the story of America is that's carried on for 300 years is we are this thing, and this is who we are. This is what we are. And as you have competing, if people don't agree on a common narrative, if people don't agree on sort of a common set of rules, this is how our society should function. That's potential for chaos and for people to, if people don't agree on this is how we do things, then how do we do things? And I think that's a lot of the question going on in the world right now is there's competing concepts on how this, American system should function.
Well, kind of to add to her comment,
Mhm.
as a parent with a kid in college and one in high school, I think of like the church. Obviously, we're in church, so we apply this to church, and there's other ways to apply it for sure.
Yeah.
I grew up, my parents grew up, and certainly like my grandparents, and I grew up, at least what was pushed to me was more like the blue. And if you talk to my kids, there is an element of church that is just blue, whatever denomination, whatever faith you have.
Absolutely. If you're dealing with scripture, that's very
Absolutely, but some of the concepts of church,
Mhm.
while, what might have been told to me at 8 years old, I was like, okay, I didn't think of it this way, but to me at that point in time, I would be, that's blue, that's tradition, that's what I do.
Right.
I didn't question it. I don't get that out of my kids.
Yeah.
And so it's like, there's more, kind of some of the stuff she's experiencing. There's this world out there that is expanding much quicker than I would have thought of 25 years ago.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So I do have another question too, like, I'll make it quick, but it seems to me, at least on the individual, you're talking about the yellow, the turquoise. I think of individuals, like you mentioned Nelson Mandela,
Mhm.
obviously in prison, very unique individual. Of course, it's like 1%. I think of people like Nelson Mandela, I think of like Steve Jobs and all these other leaders, whether you like them or not.
Yeah.
They seem weird to the rest of us who are red, orange, blue, and green, but, a lot of the good that, like you think of Bill Gates, he's kind of an odd dude, but he does all these things that kind of fit into some of those kind of concepts.
Yeah, they're working on a different level, so to speak.
Yeah, is it because the rest of us sit in these other 3 or 4 groups and they seem so odd to us? Maybe they're yellow. I mean, is that?
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say when you're looking at sort of the big concept, like how are we going to protect this planet, you're working on a different level. And the people that think that way can form these unique groups that are doing things that, the rest of us are just kind of like, what, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I think that's true. I'm gonna go, and feel free, if you gotta go get kids, feel free to do that. I'm gonna wrap up with 2 quick ideas and then we'll be out of here. This is a lesson I've learned the hard way over the years. I'm sure some of you had. People aren't going to go where they don't want to go. And that's a challenging concept. For those of us who feel quite strongly about the things we believe, this is difficult. Personally, I put a lot of time and effort into the conclusions I've come to. The thing, if someone doesn't want to go along with you or isn't able to go along with you for whatever reason, for any reason, they're not going to go. So you can either, I mean, there's lots of ways that can play out. I would encourage, and this is, from my years of experience, which, take that for what you will. But encourage people to go on the journey, even offer to go along with them and where they're going. This isn't going to cause your relationship to be made worse. It might even make your relationship stronger. Will the person agree with you? Maybe, maybe not. But you may not be a stumbling block in their journey. You might even be someone they trust enough in the future. Should they choose to ask questions about why you see the world the way you do. and you can have those conversations that you might not if you don't have that framework of mutual understanding, I guess. You're not going to get somebody to go where they want, whether it's shifting less complex or more complex. I've had to learn that the hard way in some settings. And then I'll just close with this. Learning about spiral dynamics isn't suddenly going to rid us of our biases and reaction to those who don't think the way we do. However, it does provide us with tools for creating better health, harmony, and happiness within our communities. When we come into conflict with people around us, if we remember the heart behind the person that we might want to other, it might give us the grace when we might otherwise have found judgment. So, I hope this has been helpful, something interesting. If this is at all interesting, I'd encourage you to run with it and keep, like I said, this is a very basic understanding of it. If you enjoy it, go deeper.